Hello, Merry Meet. So today's topic is something that you might think is a bit strange that me as a pagan will be discussing. But I see this on debates around religion all the time, and I felt that I wanted to address it because I think that sometimes people that criticize Christians on this might find it easier to get the point if the explanation comes from somebody who is non-Christian. Now, the topic I want to discuss is the concept of why Christians believe that Jesus dying on the cross has then opened a way for them to be saved. And a lot of atheists say, but if God is all powerful, why did he let his only son be tortured and killed? But here's the point, it was sort of the point all the time that he was going to. And so let me try to explain this. In a lot of older societies, one had the concept that one person could take on the blame of another. Basically, justice and law were very often based around somebody had to pay for a crime or a wrongdoing, but it didn't necessarily have to be the one that actually did it. As such, for example, let's say your child uh, stole something, but instead of them taking the punishment, you say, I will take the punishment for my son, or my friend, or my wife, or whatever. And even in some places in the world today, this is uh, this is practiced, where, for example, a family member may pay for the crimes of somebody who has done something within their family. And I know that to our Western modern view of justice, it is beyond insane. That, for example, in some tribal societies in Somalia, for example, it is not that uncommon that if a man does something wrong, his wife can be sentenced to rape. But the concept is this, that somebody has to take the punishment for balance to be restored, but it doesn't have to be the person who did the crime. Religiously, this has also been a common concept, with, for example, a common tribal custom that was practiced for several hundred years, where a village would have a pet goat, and this goat they would treat as one of their own. They would treat it very, very well, feed it well, and all of that. But then, um once a year, they would kill the goat and then, of course, get a new one the next day, basically. So, and this was to put the blame of all the village sins on that goat and let it pay for it. That's where the concept of scapegoat comes from. And in a lot of Europe with noble families and so on, it was forbidden for example, a school teacher to hit a noble child, but somebody had to take the punishment. So they found some poor child of the same gender as the little noblewoman, and every time that nobleman did something for which he would have been spanked by his teacher, the scapegoat took it instead. Now, like I said, I do not say that I agree with this concept of justice, but I'm saying that from all times it is a common concept. And if we look at even pagan religions, we see it all the time. For example, in Greek mythology, uh, the character Andromeda's mother basically insults Poseidon, and so she has to offer up Andromeda as sacrifice. We see this again and again with somebody being sacrificed to make up for the sins of others, and this is the concept with Jesus. That basically there are some cosmic laws that cannot be broken, that there has to be a certain degree of balance. So when somebody sins, and I'm talking from a Christian perspective here, not that I am Christian, but basically from their perspective, when somebody sins, somebody has to pay the price. However, that is why then God sent his only Son to earth, because by making that sacrifice, Jesus has already paid for the sins of everyone. He has taken on the punishment of everybody else. And basically the easiest way to explain it would be that, let's say, like I said, if somebody does a crime and a family member steps in and says, no, I'll take the punishment. You can punish me and not my son or my daughter or whatever. And therefore, it doesn't really say that God, the Christian God, isn't powerful, that he can do things, because basically he wanted to do this sacrifice. I mean, if both God and Jesus had not wanted it, Jesus could have walked away. He could have had the tail out of there. But he doesn't, because like in very many pagan myths, he's the sacrificial God. It's like in the very common myth that is used within Wicca, where the god dies to give the land new life. Basically, he is sacrificed for the good of all. He is sacrificed to produce uh, fertile grounds for next year. And I mean, he's a god. It's not like he couldn't just say, fuck this, and get out of there. In a lot of these societies where these kinds of basically scapegoat justice has been used, the scapegoat would have to be willing. It had to be a willing sacrifice. Not all, but in a lot of them it had to be that. And that's part of the concept within Christianity, that nobody forced Jesus to make that sacrifice. He did so willingly. And it's basically so that whenever somebody sins, according to the Christian definition of sin, if they basically believe and give their soul over to Jesus, then he has already paid for that sin. He has already taken on the punishment onto himself, so that there's no need to punish the person involved. And that's very much one of the biggest differences between the New and the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, there were very little forgiveness. You made a mistake, you were fucked. But within the New Testament, it's a message of new hope, that somebody has already paid for these sins. So as long as you accept that absolution, your sins doesn't count in a way, because they've already been paid for. So it's not that God could not have stopped it. I mean, he could probably then have, if you believe in God, sent a lightning bolt from heaven and just smited all the Romans. But that wasn't the point. The point was that Jesus was to be a willing sacrifice, a willing scapegoat to take on the sins of everybody else. And that's sort of what he was born for. He was born for two things. One was to create that balance, that there could be complete forgiveness because somebody has already paid the price. it's a little bit like if you go to the store and you just say, okay, I'll pay in advance, so that you can just go and get whatever you need from that store later without paying because you already paid the bill. And so that's one reason, and the other reason was, of course, then to bring new teachings to the world. So, yeah, I completely get that some people don't believe in this. But to say that that is proof that the Christian God doesn't exist, that becomes wrong. And especially among pagans, because basically we have a lot of the same myths. We too have the concept of the sacrificed and reborn king. Because really, when the goddess gives birth to the god at Yule, his basic, the end of his journey is to be sacrificed for the good of all. For the land starts to die, and there's all this negativity in the land. But the god takes that in on himself, and he is killed and sent to the underworld, where the goddess goes and meets him. She cleanses him, and then he is reborn again in her, and the cycle starts anew. So and if you look at all the pagan beliefs, you find this concept again and again and again, with gods that are sacrificed to take on the blame of others, or a sacrifice for the good of mankind. For example, Prometheus, who gave fire to humankind against Zeus' orders. Basically, the story is this: Prometheus was said, "Look at the humans you have created, Zeus. They walk around in animal skins and they freeze to death and they can't even cook their food. Isn't it time we advance them a bit?" And Zeus said, "No. If they get fire and they get advancement, eventually they will rival the gods of Olympus." And Prometheus said, "Fuck that." So he taught mankind how to use fire. Zeus was not too happy, so he chained Prometheus up to a big rock, and a giant eagle came each day and ripped his liver out. But of course, since he's a god, he regenerates, so he has done this again and again and again for eternity. And that is very much the same story. For the betterment of mankind, for mankind's both then physical advancement, but fire can also be seen as a symbolism for spiritual advancement. Prometheus gave up his life. He was willing to be tortured for eternity to help mankind. And that's just one of many such stories. And really, the story of Jesus falls right into that. So it becomes sort of hypocritical for pagans to say, no, that invalidates Christianity because God could have just stopped it. Yeah, he could have just stopped it. But the point was that, again, like in so many stories, the spiritual king, the God child, was willing to be sacrificed for the good of mankind. And that's the focus of the story. And you can look at it both literally, of course, but you can also look at it very metaphorically. And what it really does is create a balance so that forgiveness is possible. So yeah, that was just a very short explanation on that topic for those that might have a problem to see what place such a story of horror and torture would have it in the Christian religion, and why the Christian God would not in that story, if one believe he's all powerful, just move in and stop it. Because basically it was what Jesus was born to do. He was born to be the scapegoat of humanity. And just like a mother who takes on the sin of a son and gets punished in his stead, he took on the crimes and sins of all of humanity and was punished in that stead. It's basically as simple as that. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Have a great day. Blessed be.